see our Mayor Tecklenburg, who's going to take it from here. So thank you, Mayor.
Great. What did I miss?
Just looking for people we didn't recognize on the big screen. So
Terrific. Yeah, we're going to have introductions for any new members and welcome our guests. Hi, everybody. Greetings. Glad to see everyone again. Thanks for joining us in this effort. And I guess I'll call us to order. So that was on the, who did we find out there that's either a new member or a guest with us today? Carol, who did we find?
we have a new gentleman from the Public Service District, James Island Public Service District.
That's me.
That's
Kyle.
Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor.
Tell us about yourself.
I'm in Columbia. I am working with Dave Schaefer and the Public Service District on the trying to get the funds to expand the sewer and clean up the creek.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah,
I love
good.
it. That's terrific.
Thanks.
Anybody else new or visiting with us here this afternoon? And I think we all pretty well know each other. Again, to save time and not go around the whole room, thanks for being with us this afternoon. And Andrew, thanks for the piece you had in the paper the other day. That was nicely written and a good plug out there. Ties into the work that we're doing. So we have a watershed plan management presentation on our agenda. Is Will out there? Is that Will?
Mr. Mayor, Will's not here. He's stuck in the field and I'm sure is very soaking wet right now. So I think I'm going to be filling in for Will as plan B.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, carry on. Proceed. Thank you, Andrew.
I am going to do my best to fill in for Will, but he's the expert and spent a lot of time developing this plan. And I'd like to give a shout out before we start to Patrick Moore, who brought Terracon to the table to be able to do this plan for us pro bono. And so Will is a environmental specialist with Terracon and was the one that we worked with directly in developing the plan. So big thanks to Terracon, big thanks to Patrick Moore for helping bring that opportunity to the table. The bottom line, I just want to remind everybody how we got here and what the watershed plan is all about, sort of big picture. So, you know, the bottom line is that a watershed plan identifies the sources of pollution and then does that so that solutions can be implemented. But it also provides a framework for all of us to work together. It's a big part of why we're here. But I think one of the big underlying reasons that we're all most interested in too is that it enables us to seek funding from DHEC as part of the 319 grant program. We need a approved watershed plan in place, and the activities that we're seeking funding for in the 319 grant program have to be outlined in the watershed plan. So with that, I'll just kind of skip over some of the, I'll just kind of skim over the surface of some of the main sections. The first section that everybody will see is a discussion of sources. And the plan lists a number of sources. The Plum Island discharge point, which is actually out of the watershed. It lists sanitary overflows. It lists septic systems. Animal feeding operations is an interesting one. I think we weren't able to rule out the existence of any of that sort of thing. So that could be anything like, a small horse farm or that kind of thing. Urban runoff, which is where you get your domesticated animal waste, wildlife, pelicans, geese could be, pelicans, raccoons, anything like that, deer, and then of course, boating activities. So those are really the sources of bacteria that we're working with. The goals of the plan are, one, to identify all the sources of bacteria pollution to the creek, to improve water quality in the creek so that James Island Creek meets its state water quality standard for safe recreational use, and then to promote and protect water quality as an ongoing concern and as the area grows and develops. The meat of the plan, I think, is in what's called sort of the action plan or the best management practices. And so those cover a wide range of things, and they're roughly divided into watershed-wide best management practices and site-specific best management practices. And you'll find a listing of those right in kind of the middle of the plan, from the 20s through the 30s, I think, page-wise. And those cover, I'm not going to list them all. I mean, we can all go to the plan and read through those things specifically, but Will's done a nice job of providing a little outline for each one, not meant to be an exhaustive list. That's something that's important to remember. We can add things to this plan over time. And we can choose not to do things that are in the plan, or we can choose to do things that are in the plan and seek funding for those. You don't have to do them all at once, or you don't have to do them in order. We can pick out the pieces that we feel are the ones that are going to have the biggest bang for the buck and really drive water quality improvements in the creek. But just as a general matter, there's a lot of different things in there, everything from educational campaigns to pet waste management programs to ways to discourage unnatural congregations of wildlife, to developing uniform septic tank policies for the entire watershed across the city, county, and town. Things about incentivizing pervious cover for residentials, and also for businesses. There's BMPs around septic tank removals. There's continued water quality testing. So there's a whole ton of them there. And if you're going to read one part of the plan, I'd suggest you read that one. It's not a mystery what the potential sources are, but we're all here, I think, to talk about solutions and what we can do for the health of the creek. So that's where I think the meat of the plan is. And if there's anything that's not there that should be there, I would say, bring them up, and we can work with Will possibly to get them added to the plan. One of the other things I'd like to point everybody to is the estimated load reductions for BMPs. I thought Will did a particularly good job of researching these, and they're estimated, right? So these, sort of not an engineering study or a scientific study that goes along with this, but he was able to find some research to estimate load reductions for bacteria load reductions or bacteria pollution reductions for each of those, for a number of the BMPs. Those are on page 50. I think the next biggest part of the plan that we're all interested in is obviously funding opportunities. Will's listed out a number of funding opportunities, both the local level, state level, and the federal level. I think they are kind of the obvious ones, and I think we need to be thinking sort of creatively about any additional ones we can add there. So that's a watershed plan in a nutshell. I will do my best to answer any questions, but I wish Will was here to back me up.
Anybody got questions? Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. Yeah, a great summary, Andrew. And my basic question is, did we send the plan to everybody, or are we going to do that after now? I know I got a copy, but I think it was just individually. So can we make sure that we do that?
I do have a final copy. I'm happy to send it around. I think I'll do it as a Dropbox link, because the plan, I think, in total is about 10 or 12 MB. So I don't want to clog up everybody's email. But Liz, I guess I can send that to you for distribution, if that works.
She might have gotten off.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the best way.
Oh, no, she's still on there.
And then I have another question, Andrew. At the beginning, you started off by saying, in order to qualify for like the 319 grant, for example, which is the big one that we're, doing this for, you used we need to have an approved plan. So what process do we get an approval? Is that a vote we take, or is there some more official body?
The plan as it stands now received approval from DHEC earlier this year.
Okay.
So we're fully approved watershed plan.
Yeah. Great. That's good to have on the record.
Mayor?
So we plan to have the plan linked on the town website and available that way soon. So we're working on that.
Right.
I do have one issue with the plan.
We'll do that too.
I had in the plan, it discusses how in the town of James Island, the water system, Charleston water system, and the sewer system, the James Island PSD, are separate, and therefore that it's theoretically possible that the sewer may be cut off and the water continue to operate, and that sewage would be spilled into the environment, and that would be a source of pollution. Now, the town some years ago passed an ordinance requiring that the water system cut off the water in this circumstance. I'm not sure that we've had complete follow through, that all worked out. We talked with the Charleston water system about that, and they agreed that they would be obligated to turn off the water if in that circumstance, but I don't know that it's actually been done. And, it is possible for independent sewer systems like the James Island PSD and water systems like the Charleston water system to coordinate and have joint billing, so that only people who pay both their water and their sewer bill get water. The sewer isn't cut off separately. And I understand that there's been some conversation about that possibility. And I would just ask everyone here in all our capacities to urge that conversation come to fruition, and that the PSD and Charleston water system coordinate their billing. So so there is some complications on that issue. It's, the way it was written was did not take into account what we've done already and what we can do.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mr.
that
Mayor-
sounds very logical, Mayor, to me. Would that be more likely to be policy or technical? Should we assign that to a committee to study?
Well, my understanding is the Public Service District and the Charleston Water System are working on it, and they may not be prepared today to talk about where they are or what they think about it, but and I think it's policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If I did send it to a subcommittee to work on, I would say policy.
Why don't we let the PSD and Charleston water system come back to us at the next meeting on that? I see Mark Klein has his hand up, though. Maybe he wants to offer a comment. Mark?
Yes, Mayor. I was just going to say, we have met with the PSD, Mr. Schaefer, and have opened the discussions on billing for those customers of the PSD that are outside the city. I think right now there's sort of a mixture of how that's done, but it's pretty much trying to get it consolidated so that it's under one billing system for water and sewer for all their customers.
Yeah, it's not, this is Ken Hill. I'm in here with Mark. How's everyone doing? Mark's right. We have done the initial meeting. It's not as simple as it sounds on the surface. I guess nothing ever is, but we have quite a mix of situations on James Island where you have PSD area customers served by Charleston water system lines and the vice versa. You have City of Charleston customers served by PSD lines. The PSD does their own sewer billing. We do the water and the sewer billing when it's in the City of Charleston. We do all the water billing on James Island, but we do the sewer billing that's in the City of Charleston. There's some legal ramifications to some of this, which unfortunately slows down any agreement to work towards a clean way of doing this, because of the issue of a customer having paid our bill, but yet we would turn their water off for not having paid the PSD bill. The advice we're getting right now is that may not be very kosher from a legal point of view, but we are trying to work through those issues. And for the most part, I think there's an opportunity where we can come up with a game plan to get that done. There's a cost to doing that. The way the PSD right now turns a customer off is very onerous on them, because obviously they can't turn the water off on that customer. So they have to go out, if they haven't paid a sewer bill, they have to go out and actually dig up the connection and install what's called an elder valve, which is a type of valve you put on the sewer service line, sewer lateral, and then that can be operated in the future and turned off. That's obviously very time consuming, very expensive on a per capita basis, if you will. And so they would love for us to work with them to turn the water off. But again, we have the problem from a legal standpoint. We have a implied contractual relationship with the customer, where they are a water only customer and they pay their bill, and then, third party requests that we go turn them off. It gets to be a little bit problematic. So we're trying our best to work through it. It doesn't happen that much, thankfully, although the mayor is right. It does happen from time to time. But the PSD's impetus on this was just to conduct business a little more cost effectively and efficiently. But we're going to continue to talk to them and see what we can come up with. And hopefully we can eventually, garner some type of solution.
Okay, great.
So, I know there's a third area, the, unincorporated area that the town or the city doesn't have any responsibility for, but at least in the town areas, if you recollect, there's a town ordinance that actually requires you to cut off the water to a customer that does not have effective sewer. The town ordinance requires you to do that, and we discussed that some years ago. And perhaps you've got legal advice saying that our ordinance is contrary to law, and that there's some other law, some contractual law that requires you to keep the water running even if they don't have effective sewer. But I'm just not so sure about that. And also, I'm pretty confident that there is statutory language at the state level that handles this, that speaks to this issue specifically, that allows this kind of coordination. And it's not just a matter of, contract law, there's statute about it. And if there's not statute now, there dang should be. That the state legislature needs to take care of it.
You hear that, Spencer? And Senator? All right, well, sounds like more to come on this. I know Ken and Mark will keep working with PSD to see what they can work out. And if we need to go to the legislature next session, we can, right, Spencer? Yep, absolutely.
You got it. I'm looking it up now, but I'm happy to keep talking about it too.
Okay, great. So,
hey, Mr. Mayor,
Mayor.
if I may, real quick, this is Philip Sexton. I did have one comment on the watershed plan for Andrew and Charleston Waterkeeper. On section 9, which is the timeline of action plan, which is the recommended actions spelled out, I think, in calendar year timeframes. Do y'all feel like those are achievable as far as the number of actions that are recommended in those timeframes? Do you feel like those are actual achievable milestones?
That's a great question. And I would say, without directly answering the question, I mean, well, let me put it to you this way. I think the actual actions are yet, or the actual timelines and actions are yet to be determined, right? So this is just, kind of a broad swag at what we're able to possibly accomplish. And so Will was tasked with completing that section in a vacuum. And so some of that may be accomplishable, some of it may not. I think, we need to think realistically about what we can do and what we can fund. That section in particular, I know, was a struggle for Will because he's doing it in a vacuum without sort of the political and funding realities of actually making the work happen. So, some of that may be ambitious, some of it may be accomplishable.
Andrew, have you ever considered running for public office? Good answer. Mayor, back to Mayor Woolsey.
So that brings up another issue with the watershed study, is that, of course, American Recovery Act funding was not included, for good reason, but that seems like a very likely source of possible money to work on this. At least we're working really hard to make that happen. And also, when I read the study, the possibility of extending sewer is like, completely unfeasible, so expensive. It's not something, maybe we can do, it's on the front burner now. And this watershed studies puts it on the back burner as being, too expensive. And I think that's something that we need to edit it, or, at least put it a little closer to something we're seriously considering. So it was just sort of a concern with the way it was done. I appreciate all the work Terracom and everyone involved did with it, but we move forward. And then also one of the recommendations is that we continue to do measurements, right? That we continue to do testing. And of course, the city, the town, and the county have a MOU, and the county has hired Wolpert to do monthly testing and 4 times a year to do microbial source testing. So we're well on the way to, that we're going to continue to do testing, I think is already set up, right? They're all committed to that. And that hadn't all been completed at the time the Terracom study, we're working on the study, right? Doesn't seem to be taken into account.
Correct, right, Andrew?
Right. Yeah, so I would just add there that, so, what we choose to prioritize out of that kind of suite of BMPs and action items is totally up to us. And so we can pull out that sewer piece, and if we, I think there's been a lot of momentum around that issue lately, and so we can really go after it, and we can really go after that and make that one a priority. That's totally within our wheelhouse for us to decide and for us to do. So that's a piece too. And I hear you on the American Rescue. I think we can amend the plan to include Rescue Act funding. I think we can amend the plan to include, once we're able to get this issue about shutoffs worked out between the PSD and the water system. I mean, we can always amend the plan and make these little tweaks moving forward to get them on the record and keep them before the group. So heard and noted.
Great. Back to Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. Listening to this discussion just sort of confirms what I was going to suggest with the chairman and the vice chairman's approval. I mean, I do feel like this is now the plan that the committee should really dig into and come, use this as the basis for their next effort of work. We've got the framework that, for those of us who are not in this world, it's a lot easier to understand than the TMDL, that basically hints at the things that we might want to do. This is the action plan, these are the strategies, like you said, Andrew. So I think the best next step for us to do would be to maybe convene you, Andrew, and whoever else worked with Terracom the most, and then have that as a little group that would send out the plan to the committees with some recommendations for how they should begin working with the plan to inform the full task force as the year goes on. I mean, it really is a great format for us to work on now.
So picking up on that, and Andrew, I think you mentioned you were going to put this in a Dropbox, or we'll get Liz to send it out to everyone. I haven't personally read it, I'll be honest with you. And I don't know that everybody here has. I think it'd be appropriate for this task force to review the plan. And as you say, it's still somewhat in a draft form, right? We can get Will to make some edits to it. Is that correct? If so, I'd like to ask this group
Right.
to give it a little scrutiny and let Andrew and Will know if you have any recommendations. What do you think?
I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great. I hate to use the phrase, but I think it's the proverbial working document or living document. So
Right. So then I think it would be appropriate also, if I may suggest, I know you said that DHEC has approved the plan, and that's all we need in order to apply for funding. I think it would be appropriate that maybe with this one round of review by us, and get kind of what we would call a final draft form, is for each of our jurisdictions to then present it to County Council, Town of James Island, City Council of Charleston, James Island Public Service District. I think it would give us the opportunity to get build some public awareness about it, number one, but just to get the buy-in of all of our elected officials and governing bodies who are a part of this task force, so that as we move forward to prioritize those things and try to get a little funding, we got at least everybody had been exposed to it and has hopefully being familiar with it. That sound good? Mayor Woolsey, back to you.
So great suggestion. And what I would suggest is the task force, as the mayor suggested, Mayor Tecklenburg suggested, we look it over, and then at the next meeting, we bring it to a vote as a task force for a recommendation to the jurisdictions to adopt it.
Yeah, that's good procedure. Spencer?
I'm back to the sewer connection thing. So come back to me once we
Okay,
get through
great.
this discussion.
Public Service District, does that sound good? And I saw County Council
this is
Member
Dave
Honeycutt.
Schaefer with the JIPSD. I would just like to add that my commissioners have at least seen the watershed plan. We made application to the Rural Infrastructure Authority. The application was due on the 13th of September. As part of the 357-page package, it was included within that package. So the commissioners have a copy of it. I can't swear to their familiarity with each facet of it, but they have it. And on the 13th of September, Mr. Wonderly came, presented to my wastewater committee. We had all the commissioners in attendance to kind of, again, go over the data, the most recent tests, and let the data speak as far as what's going on in the James Island Creek. So they are aware of it. And again, this was a discussion topic at the most recent James Island Intergovernmental Council. And so we talked about the sewer expansion, the proposed sewer expansion project at the Intergovernmental Council as well.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that.
Mayor Tecklenburg, this is Jenny Honeycutt. I do have a question, and maybe this is for you, Mayor Woolsey. What exactly would you be asking for the council to do by way of adopting this? Just a resolution acknowledging the plan, or what specific action are you asking for?
Was Mayor Tecklenburg's suggestion. He has to come up with that. Now, that's something we need to figure out exactly what, would be a resolution, I would think. Yes. But exactly, what does it mean to adopt it?
Yeah.
We need to figure that out.
I would view it, Jenny, not as a firm commitment for funding, if that's maybe one avenue you're thinking, but more almost like receiving the plan, acknowledging it, knowing that this task force has recommended it. A vote of approval is fine, but I wouldn't see it as committing any of the jurisdictions to a dollar amount or anything like that yet.
Yeah, I think we need to come up with a common plan as to what exactly how we word this.
And that would be my specific question. Is there an MOU that goes with this? Because I do not see a funding opportunity with the way you're suggesting this be presented.
We already have an MOU.
We got one of those.
So yep. We don't need another MOU.
That's right.
And so somehow, and I personally, I think accepting it seems a little weak. Yeah. But adopting it in the sense of being committed that we will, implement all of the items. No, that would be too strong. So we need to come up with appropriate language that we were, that Jenny, you agreed to, and the mayor, and that our councils will agree to.
Okay.
It's like a good idea, and this is something we like, but we have to, as we go step by step and different particular proposals come forward, and various jurisdictions would have to do something. Well, that will be a decision made at that time, whether that's what we all need to do, right?
That's right. Right. So let's just take this a step at a time. We'll get it out to everybody. Y'all make any recommendations, and next time we'll meet, we'll kind of formally as a task force decide to recommend it to the jurisdiction. Sound like a plan? All right. So thank you, Andrew, for the presentation and the work on this, and thank Will and Terracon for us, and more to come. So next up is our working group updates. First one is our technical one. Ashley, are you out there?
Hey, yes, sir, I am.
There you are.
We discussed meeting and decided to hold off until after Wolpert received some test results.
Okay.
So, Brett may have more insight on that.
Yeah, a little bit more. This is Brett. And of course, Wolpert did test a couple of weeks ago, but it takes about a month to get those results back from Florida MST testing. Similar to what CPW did in the spring. However, we have we've got human, dog, and bird and ruminant, which is possum and raccoon, whereas CPW tested for human, bird, and dog. Not seeing dog being any high numbers, but of course human is. So things are leaning that direction. I think we're of course going to invite Wolpert to come to the December meeting and have them express more of a strategy how they want to go at this. We're trying to secure different alternative sites to focus at the mouth of these creeks and then eventually the headwaters, and try to chase it as far as we can. But they'll have more details on that on our next meeting.
Okay, great. Mayor Woolsey, you have a question?
Yeah, so Brett, could you give just a brief explanation as to what Wolpert is doing for us and what they have done? At least, we've seen a couple of months of raw data, right? So, the town has.
And it is raw. I mean, we're going to get some low numbers and high numbers, and you really need a few months, if not a year, to kind of see what's really out there. And the MST is going to, of course, tell us more in depth, but of course, getting those high numbers and just trying to find out, how to respond to it. But getting the data right now is the big thing.
So, but what are they doing?
Okay, so for
what have they done?
Well, it just started. So there's 4 seasons of wet weather. So that's winter, spring, summer, fall. They just did the summer session, so the next one would be fall. And so we also get those months that they don't do the wet weather, dry weather screening. So we're getting screening throughout the year. And we're also just finished the MST 2 weeks ago. We'll be getting those results in a couple of weeks. On top of that, we've got a lot of additional alternative sites that we can dig into up Simpson Creek and all these headwaters that we're hoping to get more elevated numbers to get a little deeper into where we're going. But we're just getting out the gate, so more information will give us more direction.
I think we don't want any elevated numbers, but right. But in any case, what's MST? Would you?
Microbial source tracking, and it's the DNA that you're talking about, trying to find out who the culprit is, and more or less, we're seeing right now from the results we saw from CPW in the spring. What's surprising is the one more later in the spring had no detection at all. But in the one in March did have some elevated numbers for bird, and then another order of magnitude for human. So we're getting numbers in the 100 for bird and the thousands for human. So it's looking that way right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Brett. We'll look for more info at our next meeting. Garrett, you got a question, comment?
Yes, thank you. I had a question regarding the additional sites for testing. Is there going to be consistency between the test sites from sample to sample? Because I think this is essential to the data that we're looking at.
Right now, we've got 4 MST samples in our current contract. We can elect to go more than that. I think that that was what we want to do at a minimum, and we were letting Wolpert direct that a little bit more. And of course, it's up to us to if we want to have additional MST, we can do that. But as far as additional sites, it might be that we get a particular area, and if we feel like the river splits or the creek splits, we want to go up into those other areas, chase it as quick as we can. If we find a illicit discharge or something of that nature, then we cut to the chase.
Yeah, I think that's a good
Our point.
strategy to pursue, but I think it's also important to make sure that we are consistent from test sample to test sample.
Sure.
So Brett, right now we're doing basically right next to the Ellis Creek Bridge and next to the James Island Bridge, right at the Harborview Road. It's
Right,
Harborview and Folly Road. Those are our two sites, and we have a third one line, that we are looking towards. That we have not.
Right, Jim Isle Drive, and then if that tests hot, then we'll work our way up Simpson Creek.
So Garrett, we're trying to find out exactly where the best place for the next site is, I think is what Brett's explaining.
Right. Thank you. I understand.
So could I ask Ashley and the technical committee, after they get this latest set of results in with their review, to consider any other locations in collaboration with Wolpert and whoever appropriate to recommend? Is that reasonable?
Yes, sir. We'll pursue that.
That'd be great. Awesome.
And we'll get a quarterly report this fall, so that'll help us, and maybe they'll be able to summarize some highlights in that as well.
Oh, good.
Brett, do you know when does that due?
I don't know.
All right.
Find out, though.
Hopefully y'all can find out, sort of what the target date for our quarterly reports.
We'll get a report before our December meeting, and I'll send it out before the meeting, of course, and have Wolpert on board for that meeting.
That'd be great.
Great.
Okay.
All right. So next up is back to Andrew for our citizen education engagement.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it short. We do not have a report and have not met since the development of the 319 pre-proposal. We met prior to that to develop a general idea for what an educational program might look like, and included that in the pre-proposal, which was selected for a full proposal, but we did not pursue as a group, did not pursue the full proposal for 319 grant funding for this cycle. I think everybody felt like it was too soon and things were moving too quickly, and that we wanted to give the time more plan to mature and develop. So that's the report.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And Andrew, I did have a couple of things to add. I know we haven't had a chance.
Yes.
I know we haven't had a chance to meet. I did have the pleasure of running into Andrew and his family on the beach a couple weekends ago, but we didn't have an impromptu committee meeting. So just real quick, the Living Shorelines, everybody knows that passed in May. Clemson has worked with DHEC and DNR and TNC and Coastal Conservation League to establish a Living Shorelines website. I'll put that in the chat. But I feel like we published a book. It went through many iterations and revisions and peer review. And I think it's a really good vehicle to help educate communities on that initial site assessment and what the process looks like for applying for a living shoreline. What are the different methods? What methods are most appropriate for adjacent to your property? Those types of things are included in the website. So hopefully it will be of benefit to folks in the James Island Creek watershed. And within that, there's something else that we published recently. Dr. Denise Sanger is on this call. Ironically, both of those projects were things I've been working on for a year plus, and both went live the same day, which was kind of cool. But we received funding, DNR received funding through NOAA to establish a salt marsh short course So that was funded through NOAA. So it's for free to anybody who wants to take it. It's a 5-part course. As I said, Dr. Sanger is one of the instructors, but we look at ecosystem services of the salt marsh, some current research or ongoing research in the salt marsh, some flora and fauna highlights, threats, and stewardship. And people can register. I'll put the website in the link. Once they register, they have 45 days to complete the course. And we suspect it'll take people about an hour and a half to work through the modules, which also have supportive videos, resources for additional information, and discussion forums to, sort of give that kind of a little bit more live component to the course. So those are 2 really exciting things, I think. And I'll put the links to those in the chat, like I said. And the last sort of from Clemson education update is we have a buffer webinar coming up, a Tidal Creek buffer webinar on October 19th. I was hoping to have the link for you all, but registration should go live any second for that. That's somebody else is getting that set up for me, but Tidal Creek buffer webinar to help encourage and inform citizens about the importance of buffers.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Any questions for Kim? Mayor Woolsey?
Well, not specifically for Kim. It's more of a comment. I spoke with Andrew and I think some of the members of the task force that I think that we need to have a catchy name for what we're doing. James Island TMDL is just basically next to worthless. And, and so far we're like at James Island Creek cleanup. Okay. That's like where I'm going for if we don't come up with something better. And, I would think that our educational committee needs to come up with, something catchy about what this effort is about. I think the James Island Creek Water Quality Task Force is a good name for our task force. I don't think we need to change that. But,
pretty exciting, right?
But but I think we need to, what is this about? And that it's very important that we start sharing information. I don't want to, I think explaining to people the importance of creek ecology and, and encouraging people to have protected buffers along the creek is all real important. But what we're doing, what our problem is, that the creek is polluted, what the pollution is, the information about, that we're getting month by month about how, the dangers of swimming and so on and so forth. We need to share that information, and then, things we're doing, in particular, are initiatives about septic tank maintenance. Now, giving people information, that the tradition in South Carolina is, oh, you don't have to do anything to your septic tank by law. We just recommend things and give them information about what would be nice to do. And when when your toilet's back up, people are motivated to get it fixed. That, this might be problems with runoff causing pollution. Maybe we mention that, but nothing's done about it. And we're, working to do something about it, right? And we need to sort of explain that that's real important, that the pollution's important, the pollution's happening, and local government is working to try to address these things. That information needs to get out. And, and I don't think it's too soon to work on that. And so instead of general education about the importance of the seashore and the marsh, I guess that's important, but I think we need to focus on what we're doing in our specific situation too. That information needs to be developed and it needs to be spread somehow. Now, in the town news, the most recent newsletter, we have like on the front page, there's like a couple paragraphs that describe some of the things we're doing and, that we're working on this, but we need more. So anyway, okay. I think the educational committee has a lot to do, and it needs to get started. People need to know what's happening because, we're moving forward pretty quickly. Like the PSD has already asked for a rural infrastructure grant, right? To expand sewer to try to address problems with the septic leading to pollution in the creek, because, you know, we're getting information that the pollution in the creek is human waste. And you know, the typical James Islander, and some of the people here, I know, I've heard them say, well, Plum Island's just at the mouth of the creek. Obviously, that's where all the problems coming from. And we know that's not true.
Right.
You know,
So-
we know that's not true. And that, you know, people, we need to be telling that message that, you know, maybe somewhere in the middle of the harbor, they're causing problems, but they're not caught, you know, that's not where James Island Creek problem is. And then, you know, there's people who, you know, you said, you know, it's like, well, pet waste and stuff like that. I think part of this whole issue we have before us is some James Islanders living on James Island Creek thought pet waste was a big problem. And it's like, that's not what it's looking like. And then, you know, and then there's the sanitary sewer overflows from the James Island, from the Charleston water system and James Island PSD. And we have records of all the sanitary overflows, you know, that, and there aren't many, right? Like next to none. And that needs to be spread out too, that's not the problem. So what's left, you know?
So thank you for all those comments. I think Andrew wanted to respond. And I would say that our plan is going to drive some of these action steps. So maybe that'll play a part of it. But I would give a little recommendation that y'all look at the climate action plan that the city of Charleston passed, and you get into all those kinds of issues, Mayor, of the big picture and this, that, and the other. But then towards the end, we get a one pager that are things that you can do in your home to, you know, save energy and do something about climate action plan. It seems to me, maybe from a marketing or merchandising, public relations point of view, we got all these big issues, but maybe we try to condense it down to those everyday things that people can do. And they include those simple things like picking up after your pet, I understand. But, you know, if you read down the whole list, oh yeah, I could be doing that. You find some light bulbs going off if you can get that in front of people. Anyway, Andrew.
I would add a couple of things. One is, I think the public is in a place where, you know, my read on this is the public in and around James Island Creek is in a place where they're looking for action. And I think that's what I'm really excited to be educating about. And I think that's where we're going to make the most bang for the buck. I mean, if you look, we've been doing this testing work for 9 years, and we have consistently beat that drum about the bacteria problem in James Island Creek. There's been multiple Post and Courier articles, multiple local TV news pieces about it. It's been a mainstay of our social media communication. It's been a strong component of our email list communication and our newsletter communications. I think the public is aware that there is a problem in James Island Creek. I think, Mr. Mayor, you're spot on when you say, you know, there's a little bit of misunderstanding about where it's coming from. I think we can do a little better job of, now that some of this data, as more and more data comes in, about pinpointing sources. I think what we really need to be focused on is communicating, like, what are the actions that we're taking right now? I think we can talk about the task force. I think we can talk about the plan, but I think that's not going to be enough for the public. I think what the public really wants to see are, hey, here's something we're doing to reduce the bacteria discharges or the bacteria in James Island Creek. Here's another thing that we're doing, and here's a third thing that we're doing. And so that's where I think, in my mind, where I see this public education campaign really, really weighing in. I think there is some groundwork that we can do ahead of that. And, you know, we'll be happy to start, you know, doing that as best as we're able.
And Andrew, I think too, to add to that, I mean, as sort of a side point of clarification, you know, the updates that I gave you gave the group were aside from what the committee is working on, but we are at this, you know, amazing place where we have so many people and organizations and agencies that are working towards protecting the salt marsh. That, you know, I think everybody here agrees it's really important for us to stay in touch with, you know, what resources are being developed and how we can. I think part of what the education committee needs to do is to plug that into the community and make sure that they're aware of these developments and ways to activate.
I'll just add on that real quick, Kim, that, the living shorelines and the vegetated buffer stuff is like squarely within the wheelhouse of the plan. Right.
Yeah.
And so, those resources I think can be really quickly leveraged, to do that sort of thing. So on
Exactly.
point, in my opinion.
So all good comments. Mayor, I'm sorry. I feel like we need to move on and respect everybody's time. And let's get a report next from policy. We can come back to general comments towards the end of the meeting. Ross, is that you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've been hired as the attorney for the birds and the animals, and I'd like to state on their behalf that they are not responsible at all for the pollution of James Island Creek, and I'm happy to take that to the bank. But in all seriousness, we haven't really done a whole lot on the policy front. I think that we've accumulated some tools in the toolkit. Spencer was very helpful in providing Folly Beach's approach. We've discussed mandatory sewer connections. We've discussed some sort of septic clean out process where we can review and periodically, make sure folks are doing what they need to do on their end. And I think that perhaps as the plan, is further refined, we can kind of steer some of these policy prescriptions in the right direction based upon where we identify the needs being. But at the end of the day, and I think as this effort has advanced over the last year plus, I think that, and I agree with Mayor Woolsey on this. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a sewer connection issue. I mean, it's just it's an infrastructure capital planning issue for our utilities that are out there on the island. I mean, it just needs to be the policy of everybody to, over time, as resources and funding avail themselves, to get everybody onto sewer. I mean, it's just the way you do it. And I think that a lot of these issues will tend to take care of themselves. And so I'm excited to hear about what's going on at the state level in terms of funding. But I do think that, there's other ways that utilities can, raise revenue. I mean, they can, bond it, they can do all kinds of things. And I think that part of this is, as elected officials, not just speaking for myself, but the colleagues from across the jurisdictions here is, we need to raise money to do this important work. We need to do it. And that's where the rubber's going to meet the road. No disrespect to the pamphlets and the websites and, information and education. That's all important. I'm not trying to disparage that. But at the end of the day, I see this at its core as being just as much of a public infrastructure issue as we see with stormwater, with our roads and things of that. Sewer infrastructure is infrastructure. And as our area grows and continues to change, we need to make sure that our utilities are keeping up with their respective obligations within their own service areas. And so the work of the policy committee continues. Thank you.
Good, keep it up. And ARP, we're going to talk about in just a minute, that allows for this kind of infrastructure funding. So old business, we had the 319 grants. Andrew talked about that a little bit. We're basically coming back to that, right, folks? So is there anything else to talk about 319 grant initial proposal?
The only thing I guess I'm just curious, and pardon my ignorance here, but as far as the 319 grant, I'm not sure the capacity in which they can actually provide the funding or what that total amount. It's defined, say, in the Rural Infrastructure Authority. Typically, they give us up to $500,000 if we're selected. And I don't know if we say, hey, we can sewer 208 homes for $8.2 million. I don't know how much exactly we can pursue with the 319.
I can speak to that a little bit unless Senator Sin wants to, but she and I were on the call with DHEC, with Andrew and Emily as well. And it's a competitive grant program, it's run directly through DHEC using federal funds that are passed down. We opted not to apply this year because we were still getting all of our ducks in a row with the plan. But in general, I think an award definitely less than $1 million would be sort of consistent with what we'd be looking for there. So it's more of a future stopgap funding, competitive grant process, but we won't be able to apply until next year. So continue on as you're doing right now would be the best advice in terms of trying to put together that funding. And then I think we had talked about either this group or an organization on behalf of this group being able to submit that now that we've got an approved plan, but that would be a request for next year. So
Thank you.
All right, we're going to stay the course there. So the next item was CWK source tracking study update, which I do not know anything about. Who had that item, or who's up on that? Anyone?
Well, maybe it's, that was mine. Is that what I asked for, Carol?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got the presentation of the maps where the Charleston water system paid study was done. That was a meeting or so ago. So I think it was your request for us to know that there is going to be an ongoing annual schedule. So I think Wolpert has already taken care of that for today.
4 times a year, and
Yeah,
is what we've agreed to, or what they're committed to do. And they've just done one, right? And we're going to find out more about it at the next meeting. So I guess that's already been taken care of, unless someone else has some comment or discussion about. So this is the DNA source tracking.
I see Mark Klein lighting up. You got anything for us, Mark or Ken?
I was just going to say, we had completed the sampling commitment that we made to go collaboratively with Charleston Waterkeeper with the 2 sample sets that we collected in March and May, I believe. So, you know, the compiled results of those tests we presented. I sent a copy of that to Liz. I don't know if she's still on and she can share.
I have a copy of it, Mark, if you'd like me to share it. Want me to put that up?
Okay, that's fine. But that's, you know, we've completed those. And I guess what I heard earlier from Mr. Champion's report that Wolpert has taken on the follow-on testing.
Great. Yeah, I remember the report, and with Wolpert, we'll continue on, Mayor. I think we've got a continuum established, so I think we're good, and we'll hear from more results at our next meeting. So then the last thing really of new business is our opportunities for ARP funding through the state legislature. I understand they may not be making some of those decisions now till the first of the year. I understand that water and sewer projects are eligible for funding, but Spencer or Senator Sin, y'all want to jump in and give us any update on that?
I'd be happy to. I don't. Oh, Senator, do you want to start? I can see your audio, but I can't hear you.
Looks like she's trying to connect.
It's connecting now, Spencer.
Okay. Well, I'll just give a quick plug on that. Kyle has been great. He and I have met, and thank you to Dave and the Jason PSD for bringing Kyle on to help with that effort. But one thing I'll ask is if Kyle can help us pull together a letter. Mayor Tecklenburg, would it be possible to ask maybe for this group to consider signing on either in your individual capacities or as a task force, just a general letter of support for that request so that we can get that to members of the committees, even though the full House isn't going to be meeting to debate these. I do think the Senate may actually be coming back, and I'll defer to Senator Sin on that, but the committee work is ongoing right now. So it would be great if we could, I think if Kyle could help draft the letter, and he and I have been texting separately about that, and he's agreed to do that. But if maybe Liz or someone could ask this group who'd be willing to sign on to it or something along those lines, Mayor Tecklenburg.
Yep.
I think that would go a long way.
I think I see nodding of the heads. I'm willing to, and I think if all the jurisdictions joined us, it would be great.
And if you could,
so just to clarify, Spencer, you'll be sending us the final draft, and then we'll give our sign off, right? That's something you'll circulate?
Yes, I'm going to ask Kyle, and I'm sort of checking my text messages in our chat at the same time, but I'm going to ask Kyle to send that to Liz to send out, if that would be okay. And then folks can just reply if they would agree, and we can sort of get that coordinated.
So we want to get this done right away, Spencer?
I mean, now that we're not coming back right away up in Columbia, I think we've got some time, but ideally in the next couple of weeks, I think it would be great.
That sound like a plan, Kyle?
Yes, I appreciate that. I think having that in the package from Representative Wetmore and Senator Sin to give to the Senate Finance Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee would show, a lot of support. Show that that the power, it would show what we all know is the case, which is that all the people on this call and all the organizations and municipalities represented here are all in favor of this as a high priority for ARPA funding.
Great. Awesome.
Mr. Mayor, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, sorry about that. I got cut off just a little while ago, but so I didn't hear everything that Spencer had to say, but I did hear her ask about whether we're coming back. And the last I heard, we are off for October. So I don't think we're coming back anytime soon. But as far as the funding goes, I put my package in that the PSD was kind enough to give me through Indra with the Senate Republican caucus that took it over to Senate Finance. So it's been in there for a long time, but I agree with everybody. Having the letters of support, I think, would help. I've also spoken to my chair. He seemed to be favorable to that as well. However, I also spoke at great length to, in fact, I had a meeting with her, the lady that's going to be managing the rural infrastructure. I think I wrote, some of you may have gotten one of my letters that I wrote about it, but it looks like the vast majority of the money for water, wastewater, and those kind of things is going to be run through her agency. And what I'm told is that basically up to 25 million is what she's going to be doing in sort of in grants instead of, what that she's historically done. She's historically only had about 25 million per year. And so now she's going to get a whole lot of money and be able to award grants up to 25 million. So we may have to actually apply through her if we don't get direct funding, but I'm sure something like this will be looked upon favorably, or I feel like it will. But on another note, it is very important that all of your agencies submit to me. And I know nobody has time and everybody's busy, but I need to know what you all estimate the number of outfalls that you need to have cleaned out, because she did indicate that she believes that we could easily tie into this funding request, the cleaning out of outfalls, as well as even tidal valves, things that are typically expensive and sort of out of our reach. So I think that, if you could, I've asked all of your public works people to get me some more detail on this information, but we are going to want to apply to her. And I've already, met with her in my office, and she understands that we're going to be needing some money, and she seemed to be pretty favorable.
Terrific. That sounds good. Dave, does that sound a little better to you?
Yeah, but I've been bugging Bonnie Emmons too. We've had a couple calls with her. She's got a 357-page grant application. We were very appreciative. We got a letter of support from you, Mayor. We got a letter of support. So it's all included in that package. She knows I'm bugging her, and as soon as we understand the rules and how that's gonna flow, we will definitely be vocal and not bashful about asking.
Right. And even though it's called rural infrastructure, obviously, I'm sure we're going to get a good bit of this, because we're about as far down the line as you can get as far as flooding and water problems and things of that nature. So like I said, she indicated to me that it was not going to be a complicated process as far as the grants are concerned, because, I keep expressing my concerns on a lot of different levels that they're even wanting to do the opioid money that way, that, you know, we can spend all of our time writing grants and never get anything accomplished. But she indicated this was not going to be a difficult process. So hopefully.
Well, that's good news. That's great news.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
only 355 pages, Dave.
Right, we got it all together, copy and paste. You get a whole nother package.
All right. Any other updates on ARP? Thank you, Spencer and Sandy, Representative Wetmore, Senator Sin, for your help. This will really make a difference next year if we can tap into some of that funding and make some of those action items that Andrew's been talking about. Actually,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And even, of course, the seawall, all of our other stuff, anything tied to water or sewer. It's just now's the time for us to do what we can do. $2 billion on the line.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank y'all.
So that's the end of the regular agenda. Did anybody have any other business they want to bring up, or comments or questions while we're all together? Mayor, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
Well, it relates back to the education, and I guess where we stopped. I don't want to drag out the meeting too long. Oh, we're 10 minutes late. But briefly, in terms of our public education program, you know, should we be expecting this committee to do everything on a volunteer basis? My view is no. You know, that the committee should be on a more supervisory basis, you know, making plans, and that we should expect to have to pay someone to do some work for us. Now, maybe we're already paying to do this, but, you know, I just think we need to be thinking in those lines.
All right.
And, you know, at least a little bit, you know.
Are you making an offer as to?
No, I was thinking we had this
Putting some money in
MOU
the
with
bill.
how we're going to share things and the cost, Mayor Tecklenburg. But anyway, Councilwoman Honeycutt. But in any case,
Mayor Woolsey, for the record, I think that'd be an excellent subject of a 319 grant request, where we could get funding to help develop some of those resources, direct the development of those resources, and have somebody that's equipped to do that, deliver that content far and wide. I think that'd be a great 319 grant project.
Great idea. Thank you.
I concur with that. This is Honeycutt.
All right. So she's been with us almost the whole meeting, but if y'all didn't note, Kathleen Wilson joined us shortly after we got started. Kathleen, welcome. Thanks for being with us. And anybody else have any other comments, questions before we adjourn? Thanks. I felt like it was a very informative, productive meeting. We're going to get a good update next time on our test results, and have all our comments back in to Andrew on the watershed management plan, so that hopefully we'll be able to vote on that. And the committees, I like to think maybe a meeting would be in order before our December meeting, if y'all haven't been meeting lately. So if there's no further business, calling once, twice, three times, we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Great meeting.